Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria is the fight of the year, period. Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria just leaked over a French-Canadian broadcast of UFC Denver last week as probably the headliner to UFC Noche. That's happening in September along with Mexican superstar Merab Dvalishvili taking on Sean O'Malley. And Dana's probably not too happy about how this fight was announced, but as UFC fans, I would think that we're extremely happy about this fight being somewhat confirmed because this was the fight that I was looking forward to the most. I already accepted the fact that Jon Jones, Tom Aspinall will likely not happen this year or at all at the rate Jon Jones is ducking. I never was really looking forward to Michael Chandler versus Conor McGregor since they're both out of their prime, and with Conor delaying this fight so much, the interest in that fight has died down for me. And there's a bunch of other interesting fights that could happen or are happening this year, but this one was definitely circled on my calendar. I think this fight is the fight of the year stylistically, and we have two guys at the top of their game right now, with Ilia just starting his reign while Max is entering a second prime. Along with Dustin Poirier, I have Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway in the top three when it comes to boxers in the UFC, so to have these two guys square off is going to be fireworks for sure. In addition to this fight being a guaranteed banger, considering how they looked in their last performances, this is going to be a very hard fight to predict. So fuck it, let's try to predict this fight. And just to note, it's been a while since I've done one of these breakdowns. In this, mini series I've been doing, I look at how the underdog in a big fight can pull it off. And though I did say this fight is hard to predict and should be close, I would say on paper, Ilia Topuria should be the slight favorite. And I think most of the odds right now reflect that, given he's the younger fighter, the champ, and has a well-rounded skill set, but more on that later. But firstly, let's look at this new and improved Max Holloway. I've seen a lot of people on the internet saying that this will play out similar to Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski 3, and that Max Holloway's weakness are guys shorter than him with stopping power. And at first, I agreed. On paper, Max has a really hard time against guys with real 155 power in their fists. That's evident to Max losing to Volk 3 times, with the third time being really bad for Max. Additionally, Max also got beat down by Dustin Poirier in their second fight by that same stopping power and never let Max get into a rhythm. But then I looked at Max's recent performances and I realized Max has quietly changed his style, and I don't think anyone is talking about it. The Max Holloway we have now, stylistically, is a completely different fighter. The image we have in our head when it comes to Max Holloway is a guy that comes forward, loves to overwhelm with volume, and is content on taking one to land 4. This trademark style has shown itself in Max's legendary performances against Calvin Kattar when he broke the record for most significant strikes landed in a fight, against Brian Ortega when he decimated Ortega in the stand-up, and when he melted Jose Aldo and Anthony Pettis with sheer volume. But as much as this is how we view Max, this is simply not how he fights anymore. You may have noticed it in his recent performance against Justin Gaethje. Max was much more patient, picking his shots well, and moving in and out, technically boxing Justin instead of walking him down like the old Max would. And by opting for quality, hard-hitting shots instead of a quantity of medium-hitting shots, Max was able to rock Justin and eventually finish him in the last seconds of this amazing performance. And you're probably thinking, Max changed up his style for this fight, because it's Justin Gaethje, one of the hardest, if not the hardest 155er in history, who just knocked the fuck out of Dustin Poirier the fight prior. So of course, Max would be a little more cautious and careful about moving forward. And this is what I thought too, at least before I saw the numbers. The last 3 fights Max has fought, he's thrown sub 200 significant strikes, which is a far cry from his usual plus 200 striking performances in 5-round wins, and far from his legendary 400 plus striking performance against Calvin Kattar. This new Max didn't start because of Justin Gaethje. This new Max started because of Alexander Volkanovski. Like I said, that third Volkanovski fight was brutal for Max. He got timed, he got stopped in his tracks, and couldn't get into a rhythm the entire fight because he kept trying to go back to his stylistic roots and walk through the punches to try to get off his own. So what did Max do post-beating? He evolved. It really started in the Arnold Allen fight. Max was far more patient than his usual walk him down approach and was hitting Arnold Allen with quality shots while moving in and out. Max had less output in comparison to his old style that even Michael Bisping in the second round said that Max was more patient than what fans had usually seen. Then we saw the result of Max hitting with quality over quantity in the last seconds of this fight when Max dropped Arnold in the last seconds. We again saw the result of Max opting for power instead of volume in his next fight with Korean Zombie, as he put an unfortunate end to a legend with a giant overhand right. And of course, we saw that power carry over to 155 as he rocked Justin Gaethje and eventually finished him. Like I said before, stylistically, Max Holloway is a completely different fighter now. No longer is he the guy that walks forward, takes a bunch of punches to land a bunch of punches. Relative to the numbers he's put up, he's no longer that volume striker. Now he is a quality over quantity type striker with legitimate power. But of course the question is, how does this newfound power and this new style fare for him against a guy like Ilia Topuria? Ilia Topuria is the complete package. We think of Ilia as a deadly boxer, which he is, but because of his knockout reel and dominant boxing performances, we forget that Ilia's base is actually Greco-Roman and Jiu-Jitsu. Ilia kind of showed it in his fight with Bryce Mitchell, where he did eventually submit him, but that was definitely overshadowed from the beating Bryce took from the boxing. Ilia can go punch for punch and bar for bar in the boxing department with Max Holloway, and on top of this, his grappling is far superior to Max's. The dangerous thing for Max, which also leads me to not being that confident in picking Max Holloway in general, is that Max hasn't fought anyone with the grappling, especially the wrestling pedigree that Ilia has. Sure, he has fought quote-unquote all-American wrestler Justin Gaethje and Alexander Volkanovski, who's shown in the first Islam fight that he is a high-level wrestler and grappler when he wants to be, but for the most part, those fights were essentially kickboxing matches. And sure, Ilia, in the same vein, is a guy with a great grappling background that chooses to bang most of the time, but I just have this strong feeling that Ilia Topuria is going to use that grappling background, especially after the way he reacted to the Justin Gaethje knockout. I think Ilia is going to mix in the wrestling even if he's not looking to submit, just to give Max a different angle and different threat he has to look out for. But I think the very dangerous thing about Ilia is that he has an elite wrestling and submission background. Max has fought a deadly grappler in Brian Ortega, but Brian's wrestling isn't half the wrestling of Ilia Topuria, so he wasn't able to get good takedown attempts and keep Max on the ground. I think Ilia might be the first guy that can not only just take down Max, but also keep him there. But as deadly as Ilia Topuria is, I do think that there is a hole in his game, and that's his lack of kicks. Ilia Topuria throws like 0 kicks, with very little leg kicks and literally 0 body and head kicks in his entire UFC career. He loves moving forward and getting into not only boxing range, but hook range at that, meaning he's all the way in the pocket, and especially loves setting up his right to the head, left to the body, right to the head combo. This was early in Ilia's career, but he's been compromised by a big high kick from Jai Herbert. And I think in general, because Ilia Topuria is so used to and so conditioned to being in boxing range, I don't think he's going to be conditioned to kicking range, which is something that I think Max Holloway should keep this fight in. If Max is able to keep this fight in kicking range, he takes Ilia's best weapon away, which is his hook-heavy boxing. Additionally, Max can also land some of his best weapons like his insanely accurate spinning back kick and his body kick that he was landing consistently against Arnold Allen. Finally, in this range, it will be harder for Ilia to shoot for the takedown, giving Max much more time to react to a shot. Additionally, I think the kicking range will complement Max's new boxing style much better. This new Max loves to slide into 1-2s and immediately gets out of range, picking his shots and opportunities well. I think the footwork is going to be huge for Max, and his ability to control whether this fight is in kicking range or in boxing range is going to be the biggest factor to victory for Max Holloway, because I think Ilia is going to move forward no matter what, whether it be to box or to wrestle. Another factor of the fight I wanted to talk about is Max's power and whether he's going to keep it with a move back down to 145. Max looked like a completely different fighter at his recent fight at 155, mostly because of the muscle he put on instead of the fat he put on last time. I'm not the biggest sports nutritionist or expert, but I would imagine that a decent chunk of his muscle mass would have to go when he cuts back to 145, but I don't think he'll lose that much power. Like I said before, this is a new style of Max, who really sits down on his punches now and opts for quality shots and not quantity. So I do think he'll have great power at 145, maybe not the power we saw against Justin Gaethje, but more power than he had pre-Volk 3 fight. So again, even though we looked at the ways Max Holloway could win, that doesn't necessarily mean I have Max in this fight. He has a really good chance, and I do think it's going to be close. I kind of switch off between back and forth personally on whether I have Ilia or whether I have Max. Obviously, since I've been making this video, I'm leaning towards Max, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ilia Topuria takes this, considering how much power he has in his hands, how great his boxing is, and how well-rounded he is as a fighter in general. But I'd like to ask you guys the same question. Who's going to win in this very highly anticipated fight? And will it be Max? Will it be Ilia Topuria? And how will either man do it if they win? Again, thank you guys for the support, and I'll see you guys next week. Peace.